Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Be There in 5 podcast. I'm Kate Kennedy, your host. And today we're going to talk about a news story that sits at the intersection of many things I feel passionate about. PepsiCo is planning to acquire the prebiotic soda brand Poppi for $1.95 billion with a B, marking a major shift toward health-conscious beverages. Traditional soda sales have been declining, and I'm not contributing to that. I, Catherine Kennedy, support Big Soda, and I love beverages. Currently on my desk, I have 3. I have a Propel, owned by Gatorade. Is that PepsiCo? Maybe. A Starbucks, and a Kirkland Signature water bottle. Now, I like to shop local, think global. I don't mean for my consumer choices to make you feel bad about yours, but you know, it's always nice to support niche artisans. I love a mass-produced beverage, but I don't drink these like better-for-you sodas, with the exception of their cherry limeade flavor, which I do think is revelatory and delicious.
This topic doesn't sit at the intersection of my interests because I'm a super fan of gut health sodas. Yeah, I don't know if I have a microbiome, quite frankly. I don't think I understand what it means. I'm not like other girls. I don't pay attention to my gut bacteria, but like I really kind of don't. But also I should, because I don't respond well to these drinks. So yeah, my interest doesn't have a ton to do with like the taste of the product itself, though that is an incentive because I know so many of you love it, and I love that you love things. My interest, my skin in this game is that I love stories involving, honestly, consumer packaged goods, because this is the biz I used to work in. I love talking about influencers with money. I love a masterclass in branding. I think this is a fascinating burgeoning category that has the potential to be the next Coke and Pepsi based on its growth trajectory, both categorically and brand-wise. I dig a female-founded business that finds their best-case scenario exit with levels of money that are so astonishing. It makes me question the system more so than celebrate the win, which is how you know it's good. And there's like controversies we can go over, like vending machine gate, and me wondering if Alex Earle and Alex Cooper, and something to do with Alex Earle being an investor in Poppi, is like the reason for their falling out and why she was dropped from the Unwell network kind of unceremoniously. And we have like no idea what's going on, but I'm nosy as hell and curious, and I have nowhere else to direct these thoughts because I don't think any of my friends are interested in the Alexes, but I can always count on you guys. It doesn't have necessarily anything to do with Poppi directly. Ultimately, I don't think. My hypothesis is that part of it is relevant to the topic of influencers as investors in brands and the potential conflict of interest as it relates to investing in beverage companies. So we'll get to that in the second hour. This is a long-form podcast, and quite frankly, I do worry that there are limitations for how entertaining content about a prebiotic beverage can be, but we're going to try. And I think there's something interesting about what role influencers played in the explosive growth of Poppi specifically. So many celebrities invested in this brand, I've come to find out. Basically, I want to do what we do best here at the Be There in 5 podcast, which is mix thoughtful commentary with somewhat baseless gossip. One of the things that really piqued my interest as I was researching this as a topic is like from what the brand was to what it is now, and how I think it played such a huge role in its, pop cultural significance and its social media prevalence, is its branding. It's very strong branding, but it's branding that's also similar to its competitor Olipop. And I became interested in figuring out like who came first. And then I've realized that Poppi started out as a brand that was called Mother Beverage, not Beverages, just Mother Beverage. And it was, founded in a kitchen by a woman named Allison Ellsworth who had like stomach problems and wanted to enjoy a soda-like beverage, and amidst the 2010s apple cider vinegar boom, created an apple cider vinegar-based drink that was like a soda substitute. But the interesting part to me was looking at the branding, not only the name Mother Beverage, but like the physical branding of this product and what it was prior to going on Shark Tank and prior to the investment that was made in it versus how it was spit back out in the Poppi we still know and love today. It's astonishing, and it's like kind of the ultimate millennial before and after that like your intern gave you, because you have to look up the Mother Beverage video. Bless its heart, it's so earnest. It's wearing sensible shoes, it's a bottle that like immediately overshares once it's in front of a group. It screams, "Hey, I have gut issues," because it's so forthcoming about being a vinegar-based beverage. in ways that I'm sure she was advised. Like, I don't know, people like want to know that they're drinking vinegar. And the branding of Poppi, I think this was the perfect aesthetic to pander to millennials that want to be cooler and to really stand out to Gen Z that quite literally is fun and youthful. To me, it just really tells the tale here of what a difference branding makes, and that the exact same liquid is in a bottle of Mother Beverage and what we know Poppi to be today, worth nearly $2 billion. I think it's like a welcome reminder that you've got to start somewhere. Because something that bothered me in my entrepreneurial era is how many unrealistic stories would completely minimize how much help they had, how much capital they had access to, mentorship, connections, like they would try and tell these inspiring stories to make you seem apples to apples with them that would just set people up for failure. And what I like about them having been on Shark Tank and having such a public story and a very distinct before and after brand wise is it shows you very clearly, very cleanly that resources, capital, connections, people with industry expertise who have done this before make all the fucking difference. And yes, you have to start somewhere. And this was their idea and they deserve all the credit. But it really matters if you have access to some of these things, and you shouldn't compare your success to theirs because it's simply not the same. But good on Shark Tank for actually, this is, what a huge payout. We'll get into that in a minute. And I also feel like I'm being too hard on the brand. It's not that funny. I think I'm delirious. I mean, they got an investment, right? It's not that bad. It literally looks like Poppi's mother, one, and I say that as a mother. Two, I know that it actually is a clever idea because in vinegar production, particularly apple cider vinegar, there's a substance called the mother of vinegar, or simply the mother, like a beneficial bacteria or something. So it was a cute idea. I'm having trouble understanding what that branding would look like draped on Alex Earle and in a Coachella installation. And I feel like the mother branding does less to fly off shelves than it does to tell you it's resting its eyes. But I will say, they weren't wrong because in the mid-2010s, do you guys remember? There was a major apple cider vinegar boom that I unfortunately partook in. It's not that, I don't believe that there's health benefits. I know that there are. It's that I didn't need to corrode my esophagus every morning making a pineapple juice, lime juice, apple cider vinegar elixir because Karina and Katrina from Tone It Up told me to. Now, I don't know if any of you guys were part of Tone It Up's America and were as blindsided as I was when their friendship severed, when I really thought it would be friends forever. They had one season of a Bravo show, kind of flopped. But for some of us, it was rare we were there. And I started this series called Influencer Unsolved Mysteries that, I've only done one of them, and then I had another one scheduled, and the person that it involved was supposed to come on and, speak for themselves, and then they backed down, and it's the whole thing. I'll talk about it some other time. But I swear, I haven't given up on the series. And honestly, Tone It Up is a major target because I want to explore what happened between them. I want to think that friends can work together. And it just out of nowhere, much like the apple cider vinegar elixir to my stomach lining, it's just destroyed. They had me wrapped around their finger. As a girlie who doesn't even like health and fitness, I bought a foam roller from them. I bought ankle weights. You don't really buy, guys, we don't need to be buying branded ankle weights. But I used to have this problem that when I was feeling empty, when I felt like I had nothing left, I would look to my nearest influencer and pay over $50 for a downloadable PDF and hope that it was going to fix my life. Their nutrition, I feel like I paid $100 for a PDF. This is not about Tone It Up. This applies to 5 of you. But I'm sure we all at some point really hung our hat on a fitness influencer, whether it's Kayla at Cena's. Who else is there? I don't really know a lot about health and fitness. I was just trying to get in shape for my wedding. I just had a darkness wash over me, remembering that at one point, for research purposes, I did pay for, I believe it was $30, the downloadable PDF that Turtle Creek Lane made. Because I was horrified. It was McKenna Cates, low sugar diet when she was under 13. Awful. Honestly, I'm always torn because for investigative purposes, I used to dial into so many coaches webinars that were just so delightfully scamtastic, but I'm also contributing to their bottom line. And the other night I was dying to call into this influencer I used to be obsessed with. Her it was some seminar that was almost $100 about divine womanhood or something, divine femininity. I don't know. Do I need that? Have I lost it? Do I need to find it? What does it mean? Like, it's just divine femininity is something that confuses me because it could go real like maha, or it could be real like, haha, joke's on you. I'm not worrying about what you say and I'm liberated. But yeah, it was like $100. And she used to like have coaching to help people with their divine femininity and charge them $5,555 a month for like one-on-one mentoring about divine femininity. And I'm fascinated. And I love how these people use angel numbers. Anyway, what am I talking about? Yes, gut healthy prebiotic sodas. And honestly, I asked you guys on Instagram, like, which one of do you engage in this category? And which one of these do you prefer? And I was kind of shocked by how many of you did not even realize that Olipop and Poppi were different brands. And I think this is kind of interesting too. What does Bethany call a cheater brand? Like, who's the cheater brand, you know? But they actually emerged at a similar time. And as millennials, nobody knows better than we do what it's like to live through a confusing era where two things that are seemingly identical come out at the same time that have virtually nothing to do with one another. But some greater universal creative force must have been guiding people to do the exact same thing. Your Deep Impacts and Armageddons, you guys get it. I find Olipop and Poppi to be very similar, but upon further research, they aren't that similar. And I think Olipop, in being a product that actually does have health benefits and 9 grams of fiber, and that, doesn't sit well in the pipes with Beth here. Though I don't have like stomach problems, but Olipops, I don't know. Apparently some people react poorly, and before you diagnose me with like SIBO or whatever, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, apparently the people that have that have trouble with these drinks. I don't know. Like, Poppi for me is just an aversion to apple cider vinegar aftertaste as a result of TIUPTSD from that elixir. And Olipop, it kind of depends on the flavor, but I like the taste much better, but it may, I don't know. Maybe it was my only source of fiber that day. I don't need to get into it. I guess what I'm saying is, you know how in like Microsoft, you know how Microsoft Windows 95 set suite of games that was like Chips Challenge. There was that game called Microsoft Bob where you just poorly decorated a home or an office. It was like Chips Challenge, a game called Fuji Golf, Ski Free. My personal favorite, Pipe Dream. I used to kill a lot of time playing Pipe Dream. And I guess what I'm trying to tell you is that sometimes drinking these beverages for some of us is a bit of a pipe nightmare. And I don't know what to do about that. And I also don't know if that makes me like the best or worst person to have this conversation, because I can't speak overly positively of them. But maybe that makes me unbiased. I don't know. It makes me somewhat objective to just being able to respect the category for its growth and these products for their popularity, while also acknowledging for some of us there are limitations. And beyond that, I do think if the market trends I'm watching are any indicator of where this category and where these two brands are headed. Olipop, by the way, its estimated valuation is like, I think 1.65 or 85 billion. Like, they're fine too. I actually would argue they may be up against more, but because they have legitimate health benefits, they aren't shelf stable. Like, they need to be refrigerated, which I also think is a bit of a barrier in terms of visibility, because Poppi, like its gorgeous rainbow-tastic ombre of flavors, looks amazing on a shelf, looks amazing on an end cap. They could take up a lot more real estate in a store, whereas Olipop is relegated to like the refrigerated, individualized can section. Is that right? I don't know if I'm thinking of that right, but that's in my head. I'm like going through a Whole Foods. But yeah, I, honest to God, think that we're headed in a direction where we're going to be talking about these brands like they're Coke and Pepsi. And so, True Be There in 5 style is to usually be running quite behind, but I thought maybe I'd try to get ahead of things and we'd learn a little bit together. I also get nervous when I talk about brands ever since the lawyer that read my book for, scanned the book for potential legal issues, had me take out hot takes about Snackwells so Nabisco wouldn't sue me. And I'm like, what? Would I be the first person to put in writing a hot take about Snackwell's Devil's Food Cookies? Chalk-like hockey pucks that were high calorie and low fat mixed with marshmallows that tasted like the emptiness we felt inside? Allegedly? I don't know. So I just always want to reiterate, this is for the fair use purposes of research, commentary, entertainment, so on and so forth. I don't have anything personal against these brands, nor do I have any sort of financial interest. I just am a curious gal who loves a bev, wanting to inform the Beths. And I think the Poppi acquisition, I think it's a case study in how branding and influencers and, cultural capital and cachet, and like guerrilla marketing intersect in the modern marketplace, creating an interesting situation where a brand virtually unknown 5 years ago can command a $2 billion valuation and secure shelf space in a beverage category historically like near impenetrable to newcomers due to the grip of century-old legacy brands. Anyway, I guess I need to back up for a second. So I kind of like initially approached this being like, okay, what makes this? Like, I understand there's tremendous growth in the category, the pre and probiotic drinks in terms of functional beverages as like a subcategory. Apparently the sales of these drinks in the past year alone have more than tripled. And I understand that there's a ton of potential here categorically and a strong like brand growth trajectory. However, when I was reviewing the lawsuit that we'll go over later, it's mentioned that Poppi's sales as of 2024 are upwards of $100 million. Incredible. But I'm kind of like, there's a disconnect here in terms of that being an unusual multiplier for a traditional consumer packaged goods company. If, the valuation is $1.95 billion and their annual sales, let's say, are around $100 million, that's a 19.5 multiplier. That meaning PepsiCo valued Poppi at 19.5 times its annual sales, which is an exceptionally high multiple compared to traditional CPG companies, like I said. And according to my limited research, will typically trade more at like 2 to 4x, their annual sales. But that's huge in terms of it reflecting PepsiCo's belief in Poppi's substantial future growth potential, the strategic value of entering this like functional beverage category, and speaks to the brand equity Poppi's built with consumers. There's mixed stuff about this because, like if it's 1.65 or 1.95, the deal is 1.95, but includes $300 million in anticipated tax benefits, which brings the net purchase price to $1.65 billion. And, in case there's any confusion. For some background about Poppi. So Alison Ellsworth is the founder of Poppi, a co-founder, I guess, technically. Also, recently found out she's the godmother of Olivia Munn and John Mulaney's children. And Olivia Munn is also an early investor in Poppi and probably is about to have a huge payday. But Alison developed Poppi, then known as Mother Beverage, in her kitchen in 2015 because she loved soda but was tired of the way it made her feel. She mixed fruit juices with apple cider vinegar, sparkling water, and prebiotics and sold the drink at farmers markets. And the brand took off in 2018 when she and her husband pitched it on Shark Tank. And the person who ended up investing, Rohan Oza, I think it was $400,000 for 25% equity stake. Rohan is like, he's the guy behind the vitamin water acquisition. He's the guy behind Buy, which I think is like, they need to say bye to that branding because I don't even know how you pronounce it. Also, I think Buy tastes like garbage, but my beverage opinions clearly are unpopular. It seems like with his help and his experience in this category in kind of developing these beverage brands out of nowhere and with huge exit plans and selling them to major conglomerates, saw a real opportunity to rebrand Mother Beverage into Poppi. Rohan is also known for bringing drinks such as Vita Coco, that coconut water, and vitamin water to market. It's kind of interesting that the person they did the deal with on Shark Tank was also involved with vitamin water because both Poppi and vitamin water have faced lawsuits over health claims. And, for misleading marketing health benefits, but they both successfully cashed out in doing so and ultimately argued that like they weren't liable. I think the famous vitamin water line was like no reasonable consumer would be misled into thinking vitamin water was a healthy beverage. Insanity. We love a sharp left. And did you know that 1 in 3 women have a hormonal health condition like PCOS, endometriosis, hypothyroidism, or Hashimoto's, yet many, myself included, struggle to feel heard or receive ongoing care to manage it? Allara Health is on a mission to revolutionize women's healthcare by providing expert, science-backed, and non-judgmental care that addresses the root cause of your symptoms so you can finally feel supported and in control. I mean, this happens constantly when I'm in groups of women, we're like sitting around casually talking about like debilitating cramps or irregular cycles, like, week-long energy crashes as part of being a woman, and a doctor tells you to like take ibuprofen and deal with it. And the truth I wish I knew sooner is that 1 in 3 women are dealing with these issues. And this is why I wanted to work with Allara, because they're a virtual healthcare service specifically designed for women with hormonal health issues. Whether you already have a diagnosis or you're still searching for answers to symptoms like fatigue, irregular periods, fertility challenges, etc.,
And what makes Allara different is they actually listen. They're a team of women's health specialists that goes beyond, take a pill, take an ibuprofen, come back in a year. And they use comprehensive hormone testing to identify what's really happening in your body, then create personalized treatment plans that address the root cause, not just mask the symptoms. Like I mentioned earlier, PCOS, endometriosis, perimenopause, Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism, and more. And it's trusted by over 15,000 women. They provide compassionate, effective care you can count on in one place. And 9 in 10 patients rated their first visit 5 stars. What I really appreciate is their transparent pricing and accepting of major insurance. So getting started is pretty simple. Take control of your hormonal health with Allara Health. Visit allarahealth.com/BeThereIn5 to get your personalized treatment plan and see if Allara is right for you. With insurance, you can get started with Allara Health for as little as $0. Experience Allara Health's expert compassionate care today. Visit allarahealth.com/BeThereIn5 to get started. Copays may apply. See allarahealth.com/BeThereIn5 for full terms and conditions. That's ALLARA health.com/BeThereIn5.
Honestly, a pipe nightmare has nothing on me because I sleep like a daydream in my Helix mattress. You saw where this was going. Helix Sleep, I've partnered with them for literally years. They've had my back every night of my life. They've had my back since the early days of this podcast. And that's because I don't know the batting average number. Is it 1,000? That's what I'm batting with Beths that love their Helix mattress. I've not heard from a single one who thought it was not a worthy investment. Helix Sleep, not only does it have a sleep quiz that matches you with the perfect mattress for you, which makes ordering one off the internet considerably less daunting. They're like such substantial high-end mattresses. The quiz asks you are you a side sleeper, back sleeper, stomach sleeper? What's your partner's sleeping position? Do you like firmer or softer? Do you tend to get hot at night? I was matched with a Helix Dusk Luxe, and we have I think a sunset and a midnight in our guest rooms. I always forget because I've gotten so many for my nearest and dearest. But I just feel like a mattress is one of those things, like it's on your list. You need to get a new one. It's not always that exciting because it doesn't seem like that shiny of a purchase. But you spend so much of your life on it. It truly has been such a worthy investment. And kind of similar to like people are tracking sleep with their Apple Watch and Oura Ring. If you track that stuff, I challenge you to track it before and after Helix. I'd be so curious what the sleep tracking would say because it's improved my life so tremendously. Just in terms of like back pain, sleeping through the night, sleeping too hot. I'm lucky for you guys. Through March 27th, we're in their March Madness sale, which is 20% off site-wide. And to get this deal, you go to helixsleep.com/BeThereIn5 for 20% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com/BeThereIn5 for 20% off site-wide. helixsleep.com/BeThereIn5. Love you, Helix. Never change. So to further contextualize the lawsuit I keep mentioning and what it was specifically about, last summer, class action lawsuits were filed against Poppi by consumers who said its products don't improve gut health as much as their marketing suggests. So the suit was against VNGR Beverage, LLC, the Texas-based corporation that manufactures, markets, and sells Poppi. The class action lawsuit alleges that 1 can of Poppi contains only 2 grams of prebiotic fiber, which means a consumer would need to drink more than 4 Poppi sodas in a day to realize any potential health benefits. If a consumer were to drink this many sodas, the suit states, Poppi's high sugar content would offset most, if not all, of the reported gut health benefits. In a statement in response, Poppi said the company stands behind its products. Poppi acknowledges no fault, liability, or wrongdoing, and instead we are focused on bringing consumers the innovation they expect from the brand they love. We're excited to move forward and continue our passion to modernize soda for the next generation, which doesn't comment on the lawsuit whatsoever. But according to a court filing last week, they agreed to the settlement and includes an $8.9 million fund for payments to consumers. In response to the lawsuit, a spokesperson said, "We're proud of the Poppi brand and stand behind our products. We're on a mission to revolutionize soda for the next generation of soda drinkers. We have diligently innovated to provide a tasting experience that millions of people have come to enjoy. We believe the lawsuit is baseless and we will vigorously defend against these allegations." So the branding that once said Poppi supports gut health is no longer on the cans or on the Poppi website. I'm kind of fascinated by the revisionist history of the brand because like so much of the founder's stories, and there's countless examples, the Shark Tank pitch, it all is like rooted in her stomach issues. And then like she never brings them up again after April of 2024. So like the PepsiCo press release talking about the brand now said, founded by husband and wife duo Stephen and Allison Ellsworth, Poppi combines prebiotics, fruit juice, etc. to create this deliciously refreshing, mouth-watering, low-calorie soda with no more than 5 grams of sugar. What originally started as a home-brewed concoction quickly became a farmer's market favorite turned Shark Tank investment, is now available at major retailers nationwide.
So that's kind of the just very high level positioning now. Like it's just a concoction in the home. Nothing to see here. But like, so the lawsuit was in June of 2024. On the Today Show in April of 2024, the founder, Allison Ellsworth, said she created Poppi after experiencing health problems, including stomach discomfort when medication made her feel worse. She began researching remedies and came across apple cider vinegar again and again. After drinking it every day for 2 weeks, she was inspired to make a better for you soda with all clean ingredients. And yeah, it all is like rooted in like her stomach issues. And then like she never brings them up again, yet they're not liable in the lawsuit. And then like later in the year, Allison Ellsworth like started talking about how the company found most consumers drink Poppi for its flavor, not for functional benefits, which I think actually is true. And I think there's just like a very obvious move away from its focus on gut health and yeah, just constantly emphasizing the brand as a lifestyle-oriented alternative to legacy sodas. Their former slogans like gut health never tasted this good and for a healthy gut have been like erased and scrubbed, even though there's like plenty of like interview evidence that states otherwise. Anyway, I guess my point is like this entire story, the entire Shark Tank pitch, the entire everything was like so based in gut health. I saw a TikTok today that the founder posted about Poppi saying, look at like, this is me on Shark Tank and pitching my brand Poppi. And she literally edited the like signage they came in with to the Shark Tank pitch that said Mother Beverage to Poppi, which was a rebrand after its acquisition. And it's just like weird. They're like going so far as to edit visuals that are snapshots from Shark Tank, a show that you could literally watch. It's almost like when people poorly conceal something that's so easily discoverable, you almost feel crazier because they think you're stupid. I don't know. I have nothing against Poppi. Incredible branding, bright colors, gorgeous visuals. It just screams fun. If they invited me to Coachella, I would have tripped over myself, beelining to, hawk that brand for eternity. Because I'm nothing if not loyal to a person that invites me to a party. The interesting thing in the context of this acquisition is by doubling down that they are a soda alternative with less sugar, they're kind of undermining their entire unique positioning in the category that Pepsi is publicly saying they acquired them for, which is this kind of category of functional beverages that includes stuff like kombucha, and better for you sodas that, sure, having less sugar is better for you, but that's not innovation. That's arguably diet soda. Well, let me read the investor relations, like press release thing. We've been evolving our food and beverage portfolio for many years. Consumers are looking for convenient and great tasting options that fit their lifestyles and respond to growing interest in health and wellness. Poppi is a great complement to our portfolio to meet those needs. Poppi is a fast-growing functional soda brand that combines prebiotics, fruit juice, and apple cider vinegar to create a deliciously refreshing low-calorie soda. Poppi's consumer-first approach, cultural cachet, and nutritional profile have nurtured a loyal fan base and driven rapid growth. The Poppi brand's unique intersection with wellness and culture is a perfect addition to our portfolio. I'm looking for like them explaining like why this is a strategic acquisition, meaning like health, wellness, functional beverages, and to see how they like danced around this. When I created Poppi in our kitchen, it was fueled by a desire to create a better for you soda. We never imagined how many people we could reach through hard work, determination to create a functional soda that stands the test of time. Yeah, so wow, that pitch, that like story totally changed too. I'll revisit one of the founder's statements in a moment. Sorry, I know it's annoying to listen to somebody read something, but there's consistent messaging of this being a, prebiotic beverage, and the drink contains a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar per can. The prebiotics come from agave inulin. And these ingredients, it is a fact that there's scientific backing for gut health benefits. There's no mention of if the amount of ACV and prebiotics in Poppi is sufficient to provide meaningful health benefits. I think what like the lawsuit was trying to explain is that the evidence showing that prebiotics from agave inulin, that apple cider vinegar, would have meaningful health benefits to balance your gut, to support the microbiome, that evidence is real, but it comes from studies using larger amounts that Poppi doesn't have. But still, I guess they could say that they have these things, positioning itself as kind of a health and wellness product that has the type of ingredients
that do have health benefits, but they're fine as long as they don't ever explicitly say what the health benefits are. Does that make sense? So that whole PepsiCo spiel about all the reasons they wanted to acquire them, it's kind of like comedic when you look at it from that angle, because essentially what they're saying is they didn't acquire them for their actual health benefits and it being in the function of the functional beverage. It matches consumers' needs for the perception of what is healthy and for a lifestyle around wellness. And what this is the health halo effect that's relevant to brands like Poppi, Olipop, a lot of brands that do and don't have, verifiable health benefits. I'm not saying there's something like insidious going on here. I'm saying this is a funny thing that happens in consumer packaged goods that I was duped by Poppi. I really thought I was doing something there with those prebiotics. The health halo effect is when products with certain buzzwords, natural, plant-based, prebiotic, benefit from a quote-unquote health halo where consumers perceive them as healthier than they may actually be based on limited evidence. And I think the lawsuit against Poppi illustrates this perfectly. The suggestion of gut health benefits created the perceived value beyond what the actual ingredient amounts could deliver. But their branding so established, the perceived value is already there. And I think your average consumer is not like paying close enough attention to this stuff to like realize that it's not really delivering something that's meaningfully healthier. With the exception of, again, it being lower sugar than a regular soda, PepsiCo essentially acquired a diet soda with healthier ingredients, which is more akin to like a Zevia or something, I feel like. You know what I mean? And don't mistake my tone. The things that I'm carving out as what, in terms of what Poppi is not, that I perceived it to be, is not to suggest we have something nefarious on our hands. I'm a marketing girly. What I'm trying to proselytize here is the power of branding, whose cultural cachet will take it way farther than it having actual health benefits ever could. But in its core days of brand building, the way it communicated those health benefits created a perception that now is a default setting that people will return to, allowing them to benefit from the perception of health benefits that it doesn't actually have to deliver on, because the health halo associated with this category and the brand equity already established based on its former positioning, I think sets them up for success in ways that no lawsuit nor, podcast pointing out some revisionist history is going to make anybody feel differently about it. Because what I don't think any of this is highlighting is what I actually think Poppi does really well besides branding, which is, I don't know, I just feel like we're not talking enough that people just like the flavor. When you focus on the health benefits piece, it's not great to have gone back on your word, but I'm curious to know how many people are there for that in the first place. But yeah, I think inevitably class action lawsuits are going to happen when there's a seemingly disproportionate amount of markup for what it is relative to competitors if it turns out that that perceived value isn't legitimately there. Like Amazon, which I know is fluctuating pricing, just like, okay, Dr. Pepper, 12-pack, $6.97. And then Poppi's equivalent, a 12-pack of sparkling Doc Pop prebiotic soda is $24.96. So, yeah, they're like roughly 4 times the price. And if it's proven, allegedly, that the advertised prebiotic health benefits are not there, that's obviously going to cause issues for people. But if you can technically legally say we call it a prebiotic soda because, these ingredients are scientifically proven to contribute to gut health, we are not saying this product has enough of it to benefit your gut, even though we used to, but we're going to pretend we did it. You guys get it. Speaking of allegedly nutritional beverage supplement trends, do you guys remember Ovaltine? More Ovaltine, please. Oh, what was that? I remember seeing it on TV as a kid and being like, that looks like chocolate milk. And those kids seem to be like bonks enjoying whatever that Ovaltine is. And I don't get chocolate milk on the reg, so this might be my solution. I remain skeptical about supplement beverages because I feel like so often they are misleading. I mean, Palm Wonderful, Palm Not So Wonderful. It was deceptively advertising to consumers that it was clinically proven to treat, prevent, or reduce the risk of heart disease and prostate cancer. And that shit's expensive. That's like $10 per palm in your palm. And like then when we were in Skinny Tea America in like 2015 to 2018, everything was like about diet, weight loss, anti-bloating, There's like a product out there called Skin Tea, Skin TE, a sparkling tea that says it supports skin hydration and elasticity. There's, people thinking their beverages need to work overtime for them trickled down to Panera Bread, who's faced 2 lawsuits claiming their highly caffeinated charged lemonade led to the deaths of people with heart conditions. The worst part is I still want to try it. I'm tired. I could do a whole episode on like food Mega-Hotties that have suspicious PR and, outcomes for like what's essentially like a broad category or commodity. Like who was representing kale, who was representing acai, the Brussels sprouts revolution where they were genetically engineered to be less bitter in the 90s. So we grew up using Brussels sprouts as like kind of a token gross thing to eat, like liver and onions a la Doug. But now we like pound Brussels sprouts at restaurants with like maple glaze and, pancetta bits because they're no longer super bitter. I think food trends are interesting. I think how hard we went for flatbreads in the 2010s is interesting. It's a pizza. I don't want to get too off topic. Let's talk functional beverages. I've been interested in trends involving like beverage, water bottle, and hydration culture and how they contribute to like broader pop culture. Because I think that acts of consumption are such like lifestyle choices and identity statements that make them legitimate cultural phenomena worth analyzing and not just like these trivial trends we treat them as. And this became clear to me when we did the episode of Visco Girl Wash Your Face, and they were so closely associated with their Hydro Flask water bottles. Some may argue that Gen Z hoverboarded with their Hydro Flasks so millennials could shop for mid-size SUVs and question if the cup holders can handle a 40-ounce Stanley. The Visco thing peaked in like 2019, but it was like, a form of identity signaling that carried into the Stanley Cup. And similar to like trying to trace back cups as a marker of identity, I was like, okay, well, I was trying to trace a similar trend in beverage consumption in like the soda categories because there's like kind of tropey things that basic gals like myself will always probably like, a la Diet Coke, no matter how many times rats get cancer from it. JK, it's a level of aspartame you would never consume. Don't worry about it. That is not official medical advice. I think that it really has to do a lot with the LaCroix renaissance when we're trying to figure out why all of a sudden one day, like Poppi and Olipop showed up everywhere. And I was like, where do these brands come from? What the hell is a prebiotic? Why does everybody seem to already know what they are and have favorite flavors when like I didn't even know they existed, much less there's 2 that happened at the same time. And I think this really started around 2015 when LaCroix, which is a brand from the 1980s, became a cultural phenomenon. I mean, we can only hope for this arc in our lives, you guys. I was created in the 1980s too. What a thrill. You never know when your big break is just around the corner. But the sparkling water renaissance kind of revealed a market gap. Consumers wanted alternatives to high-calorie sodas, but found plain sparkling water unsatisfying. It's kind of being more of a hint of flavor, like the seltzers you buy as mixers. It just wasn't there. And I mean, I'm not a fan of LaCroix. I've been very vocal about this. I find it so unbelievably dull. I'm a slut for flavor. I won't apologize for it. And I just think a lot of these products taste like a distant memory of what was once a better drink. And I just can't get excited about them. And the effervescence makes me feel uncomfortably full. You guys are probably diagnosing me with all my problems due to how I process beverages. But listen, I'm not always after self-improvement. I'm after complaining. So this in-between created an opportunity for better-for-you sodas like Poppi and Olipop because they offer nutritional improvements in a sense. Like Poppi's Classic Cola contains 25 calories and 5 grams of sugar compared to traditional Coca-Cola's 140 calories and 39 grams of sugar. And what made these new beverages revolutionary, it wasn't just about removing like perceived negatives like high sugar and calories, but adding positives, so functional ingredients with perceived health benefits, hence the category title of functional beverages. It's kind of shifted positioning of like a diet soda that's just kind of less bad for you, debatably, to things that were actually good for you, transforming soda from a guilty pleasure to a wellness product. And there is a lot of guilt and stigma and weirdness surrounding soda that gave people like permission to indulge in these gut healthy prebiotic sodas that felt like you were doing something like proactive for yourself. And functional beverages as a category, they are defined as like incorporating bioactive components from plant, animal, marine, or microorganism sources that promise benefits from improved digestion to enhance cognitive function like nootropics, So there are categories like prebiotic sodas, Poppi Olipop, probiotic drinks like kombucha, adaptogenic beverages like ashwagandha or mushrooms, nootropics, vitamin-enhanced water, so on and so forth. This is kind of a weird category that you can almost selectively criticize because there's a spectrum of legitimacy from like scientifically validated products to essentially, marketing hype. Because if in the same category we have kombucha with like live cultures, like that's a measurable active ingredient, but we also have vitamin water, which I think we pretty much know is like mostly sugar, though I do think nothing, combats a hangover like a Triple X or a dragon fruit. Huge fan. There's just a spectrum of legitimacy, and things like kombucha or oral rehydration solutions, shout out Liquid IV. That's like very like proven, validated method that I think sometimes people will conflate with things that are lower legitimacy, like detox drinks with no clinical evidence or beverages with like trace amounts of trendy ingredients just so they can list it on the label. I think Poppi is probably like in the middle ground where it's, yes, a prebiotic soda, but that has some active ingredients, but, arguably from this lawsuit, potentially insufficient amounts. I'm interested to see if this acquisition by PepsiCo impacts their formula. Sometimes these acquisitions like fundamentally change brands in ways that alienates a lot of the consumers that drove the value in the first place, and sometimes they're careful not to. It's kind of like bigger bev-al companies adopting microbreweries. I think a lot of times people don't even know that like Miller Coors owns your favorite craft beer, but sometimes it's obvious. I think it totally depends. Next, let's get into the Olipop rivalry. My question's about the Cider brand. The vending machine controversy. And then, we'll get into celeb investors, influencers, and the Alexes, Alex squared. But first, I want to thank another one of our sponsors that keeps this program free and who allow this to be my job. I can't spend 3 full business days researching prebiotic sodas without their sponsorship. So we have several ad partners this week, but also a 2-hour-long episode. So hopefully it all balances out. But thank you for your patience. And this week I want to thank, once again, Amika. Guys, Amika, they're really supporting Be There in 5 and taking a chance on me. And I'm an independent podcast, and it's not always easy to convince brands this is worth their while, but they really understand the best. They've been awesome. And I've learned a lot about hair. And I also have been using products that in categories I never used before that have meaningfully helped with strengthening and repairing damage. Well, you've heard me in recent episodes talking extensively about their Perk Up Dry Shampoo, which was my gateway product. It sells itself. It's the #1 full-size dry shampoo in the US. It's talc-free. It's safe. It's so much better quality for your hair and just what you're breathing in relative to other dry shampoos. And it absorbs oil. It doesn't leave residue. That's a product they're really known for. It has endless 5-star reviews. And if you want to try one, I would start there if you're a dry shampoo user, or buy some of the minis. I love to buy a mini. And see if I like it and then buy a full size, but it doesn't have an oppressive smell, which is huge for me. In these trying times, it's also oppressive to blow dry my hair every day. So this is what gets me through the week. I also brought up recently Midnight Mender, this overnight hair mask they have that came out this month. And I'm so confused by it because it works so well. And I don't totally understand how, I guess science, but it's it resolves split ends overnight. And I know that sounds like a very big statement and an overstatement, but it actually does. And I'm just amazed by all these categories I'm discovering that I didn't participate in before that actually strengthen your hair, repair damage, that are kind of passive things you can use while you're sleeping. And it's well, why wouldn't I do this? And it's well, why wouldn't I strengthen my hair overnight? And I think working with a prestige hair care brand like Amika, who I'm fortunate enough that they'll let me try different products and talk about the ones that I, really work for me and my hair type. But the great thing is how inclusive they are. They have 14 different product lines for a variety of different hair types and needs. And I found my hair type through an online quiz that you can do too. But Midnight Mender mends all types of damage. They do clinical testing, which they don't have to do for their hair care products. And Midnight Mender will make your hair 9 times stronger by morning. 9. Clinically proven. It's kind of crazy. But I think I'm new to this league of hair care. This is a prestige hair care brand. This is salon quality. This is what my colorist and hairstylist use. And I'm kind of shook by what a difference it makes actually using these types of products in your home. I'm endlessly grateful to Amika, which means friend, for being a friend to me, for being a friend to the Beths. And because Amika loves Be There in 5 listeners as much as we love them, they're giving you a one-time use code of 20% off your first order through the end of March. Just go to loveamika.com/BeThereIn5 and use code BeThereIn5 at checkout.
That's loveamika.com/BeThereIn5. Code BeThereIn5 to get 20% off your first order through March 31st. Can we talk about Olipop for a minute? Just because so many of you thought this was the same brand on Instagram. The origin story seems more strategic as gut health and functional beverages were gaining more momentum. And the founding team positioned Olipop as a scientifically backed alternative to traditional soda, emphasizing their product development process and a more science-forward approach. And Olipop and Poppi emerged almost simultaneously in the marketplace. Olipop launched its first products in October 2018. Poppi, then called Mother Beverage, began selling at farmers markets in 2018 and appeared on Shark Tank in December 2018. But again, it was called Mother Beverage and didn't rebrand to Poppi until 2019. Do we have a cheater brand? I feel like I'm spilling some carbonated tea here. Like I mentioned earlier, because I think this has happened so much in our millennial memory, I often will assume it's like some broader force from the universe that makes two things like that are almost identical show up. Armageddon, Deep Impact, Ants, A Bug's Life, Friends with Benefits, No Strings Attached. But Poppi is really similar to Olipop, a name that already existed prior to its rebrand. And the scandal. Talk about dirty pop. A little sketchy. So the key differences between the two, it's Olipop contains 9 grams of prebiotic fiber per can, derived from botanicals. Don't know what any of those are, but marshmallow root sounds delicious. Poppi contains 1 to 2 grams of prebiotic fiber per can, while apple cider vinegar is about 1 tablespoon per can is its primary functional ingredient. Olipop is 35 to 45 calories per can with 2 to 5 grams of sugar. Poppi is typically 20 to 25 calories per can with 4 to 5 grams of sugar. But their branding is so similar, people find them indistinguishable. And how frustrating to be the one if you have lesser market share or haven't cashed out an exit yet, and the cheater brand's the one that got ahead. I mean, I'd probably pass away if some podcast named Be There 15 Early sold their back catalog and started years after me and just did everything I did, but better, meaning shorter and with guests like a normal person. Somebody should start that, honestly. I am curious if Coke will enter the chat because they launched their Simply line that falls in the functional beverage category. I don't know how it's doing. But it's kind of what Pepsi's avoiding by going this route of acquiring one instead of developing a new brand when they're not competing in, a burgeoning category. Who knows? Dr. Pepper, I was about to say Dr. Pepper Snapple, Dr. Pepper Keurig could also go for it. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I just cannot imagine Olipop won't also sell. And I mentioned earlier, they have also an insane valuation, which, good for them. I'm sure they're doing A-okay. So Olipop is definitely positions itself more as a sophisticated microbiome supporting approach and does have clear health benefits. I mean, it has several grams of fiber. And Poppi, I think is more, their positioning I feel is more lifestyle. They're more ubiquitous across social media. I think their branding's really strong. I think their messaging about gut health is secondary, but was on the cans until they got sued. And I think Olipop marketed in a way that was a little more health focused, a little more educational about gut health. Whereas Poppi, they've really doubled down into social media, sponsoring Coachella brand trips. They leveraged celebrity investors. They created viral moments. They have a Super Bowl ad. They tried to send vending machines. They're just kind of two different approaches. So the Super Bowl Sunday or the weekend or the days surrounding that weekend, Poppi sent 32 full-size vending machines to major influencers to promote its $8 million Super Bowl ad. And the backlash was almost immediate from TikTok creators in ways that confused me. It's a form of what I guess you could call guerrilla marketing. It's an expensive form of influencer marketing. I don't know what this would do to wood floors. So I don't know even if offered. This isn't a dream of mine. So I don't know if I would have thought this installation was as cool as it was clunky as fuck and would make me nervous with a toddler around. So I'm interested if a lot of people turn this down. And people were calling their influencer gifting strategy tone deaf. People also started criticizing the lack of diversity among the chosen influencers. Totally fair. Noting that most of them were white. The whole thing turned into a PR nightmare, with TikTok users going from commenting on influencer posts to making their own videos dragging Poppi for their tone-deaf marketing move. Why are you giving these massive expensive gifts to already wealthy influencers who have the most? Why can't you put those machines in places where people do the most and get paid the least? Schools, hospitals, community centers. This was early February, firefighters, which is honestly a really good piece of feedback that I would absorb as Poppi that I think is a really nice idea for a company to be doing in general, not just for the goodwill of PR.
But it was delivered with a level of aggression and contempt that I think surprised me, because even though that would have been cool, the thing about PR is it's going to go to people that have reach because they want exposures. I think it's really cool when brands do a combination of like loyal consumers, fans without followings, and influencers alike. But the bottom line is you've got like a marketing plan. The person in that role has got a budget and a goal for eyeballs or ears or how many people they need to estimate to lay eyes on the brand or the message or whatever it is. And they find the most effective mediums to do that through whatever marketing mix they think will be most effective. And part of that's going to be influencer marketing. And influencer marketing is tremendously inexpensive relative to traditional mediums like TV and beyond. Especially a lot of their competitors like really overspend in. And while Poppi did have an insanely expensive commercial in addition to this, I actually think that like compared to other brands that we don't even think twice about, that, and it's not that like, it's valid because people hold influencer brands to high standards because trust and authenticity are like the currency of social media. And, I think sometimes that proximity effect of like people reacting disproportionately to one person or brand doing something that other people do all the time, and it's just normal, it kind of speaks to how well that person or brand feels personal and accessible to people. If Pepsi runs a Super Bowl ad, they're a distant, faceless corporation making marketing decisions. But when an influencer adjacent brand like Poppi, or especially if you've like supported them in kind of a grassroots from the get-go sense, like does something similar, it creates an illusion of intimacy that paradoxically leads to harsher judgment. And I think we hold people we feel connected to a higher standard than corporations. But when you're the person being held to that disproportionately high standard who's just like doing your job, it's not that you don't want to take on the feedback. It's that you feel like the anger, frustration, and contempt you're on the receiving end of is kind of like misdirected, and it's just people like that are really excited to pile on to see you fail, that have reached a point of watching your career or brand that they kind of were looking for an off-ramp anyway. I think it's a perfect storm of a cultural backdrop that at the time was really tough, and this did seem out of touch, to be fair.
Anyway, so it was just an attempt to generate excitement and brand visibility, and it escalated very quickly. And things got heated on TikTok and Instagram, not only between like Poppi, like the influencer post about the vending machine and the influencers and Poppi, but also like Olipop entered the chat and kind of went rogue and
to like pour gasoline on the fire. And they started commenting on these viral videos, claiming each vending machine cost $25,000, meaning Poppi spent $800,000 just on this influencer stunt. And Poppi later claimed this figure was inflated by 60% and not accurate, but the damage was done, because I didn't even know that till now. In my head, the $800 figure remained. So eventually, the apology, it always does, it always comes. Allison, Poppi's founder, eventually hopped on TikTok to do damage control and, insisted the vending machines were never meant to be permanent gifts for influencers. They were part of a larger campaign where they'd be redeployed to community locations. And she basically said, like, nobody wants a giant vending machine in their house forever anyway. But I think the more important thing here is that the fiasco highlighted a bigger shift happening in influencer marketing that doesn't always happen like worst case scenario wise, but I think is important to be privy to as a brand or as anybody promoting anything. Consumers, like, there's a level of fatigue with seeing brands lavish, expensive, extravagant gifts being given to mega influencers who already get everything. And I think it's frustrating to feel like invisible and voiceless and to reward people that seem like entitled sometimes. That can happen to anyone in any brand. And it could be Olipop someday. And I just don't know what kind of dynamic they established. It could be an interesting ongoing rivalry. Sharks versus Jets. Cider versus fiber. Looking forward to it. I feel like it now makes a lot more sense to me why Olipop was quite aggressive during Vending Machine Gate in the comment sections in terms of dragging Poppi, and there might be some pretty deep animosity. If you consider the cheater brand of it all, the branding like so close in proximity, them like launching the same year in theory, but the rebrand happening after Olipop was in the market, the fact that Poppi, really stands to gain from the perceived health benefits of their previous positioning that they've now abandoned because of its illegitimacy, but they still get the goodwill and like the halo effect from it, in addition to reaping the benefits of the broader category of functional beverages because many of them do have health benefits, not to mention their direct competitor that is like so similar in branding and essence that people literally think it's the same company. Like they actually do have health benefits. They actually have 9 grams of fiber. They are advertising something they're actually following through with. And meanwhile, like they're getting kind of associated potentially with the vacuous nature of a health halo that's not really all there when they're like putting in the work, investing in and promoting the science and health benefits that their drink actually like delivers on. But they have a strong valuation, so I'm sure they're fine. I just want to acknowledge that, like, yeah, I might be in those comments being like, hey, those vending machines, heard they're $25,000 a Poppi. Get it? Shout out to Olipop. You're the real star. I actually think this is kind of an interesting angle in terms of taking into consideration this health halo effect and how it impacts so many products we interact with. Being conscious of the markup we're paying relative to the actual proven benefits we're getting, there's a level of subjectivity with how insidious this may seem based on how much the markup is, you know, who the benefits are allegedly for, what they're over promising. I'm like such a sucker for something that says natural when that's like meaningless. But when it comes to things I buy for my kid, I am very easily lured in by those terms that make it seem safer. I'm hardly a crunchy mom. I'm a pretty chemical forward gal. But if I can choose between a wipe on a mucous membrane that is more or less associated with chemicals that even have a vague tie to something carcinogenic, obviously I'm going to pick the safer one. I really like the Yucca app for that, by the way. This is why I swear by this brand. People think it's just a rich person marked up unnecessary thing. I never talk about it publicly because people get so mad. But when I tell you, I love a bougie brand, I do. I love a perceived benefit. But oftentimes I think people misunderstand perceived benefits, and there really are actual benefits. And one of these examples is the brand of Coterie diapers. I will ride or die for those things. People that have told me they leak and stuff, I found you just need to size up. But they will any diapers you don't use because while you're trying to figure out the sizing, they'll replace and they'll just ask you to donate the packs you have, which I think is a really great policy. Their wipes are strong as an ox, never break. I never knew baby wipes were so thin and how high risk that would be, especially when I have Gel-X nail extensions. But besides that, there have been like wipes that have been recalled or like have class action lawsuits for like varying degrees of harm. When I was looking in my app, Yucca, I found an app that gives a score for product safety. My app told me that Coterie wipes are 100 out of 100, whereas some of the more popular ones or ones you can buy in bulk or ones that are a lot cheaper were like 49 out of 100. So what did I do? I bought the tremendously more expensive wipes, felt a little bit better about it, but will I ever see a return on that? Like, probably not. Do any of these allegedly harmful things in the other ones, like, do they make that big of a difference? I don't even know. It's very hard with babies, with kids. Your fear is so easily baited into buying more expensive stuff. And I never know how to feel about it because I don't want to shame moms who go for the expensive stuff you don't really need. And I think a lot of registry and baby product shaming is stupid. Nothing drives me crazier than somebody being like, how hard is it to scoop and shake? Like a baby Bretza is the number one most unnecessary. I'm like, who are you and why are you talking about my best friend like that? A baby Bretza changed my life, my mental health. I bought 2. I had one upstairs and one downstairs, which I know is excessive, but my suffering had peaked to a degree where I just decided I was going to have a very bougie baby experience, and I loved every minute. Well, no, I loved most minutes. They're so soft, and compared to other diapers, he never gets diaper rash. Ever since he was an older baby, I've used something called the Pant, which is elastic and pull-on. You can put it on like a regular diaper, or it slides up like a pull-up for like babies, though. And I'm just so brand loyal and have had the most positive experience. And it has nothing to do with it being a perceived luxury product or higher markup or whatever. It's like there's kid stuff that when it works for you is convenient and gets rid of actual problems. The markup becomes a non-issue. Like you're just doing it, which is a very privileged thing to say, mind you. But I think many of you can relate to mom frustration that money isn't an object, even though it's definitely an object. Anyway, not an ad. I think I tried to work with Coterie. I don't think they were interested. I forget what happened. I would say that's the one bougie baby thing I went for that holds up from perceived benefit to actual benefit. So much stuff absolutely does not. But constantly see people chalking it up to unnecessary qualifications for diapers and it being all a branding ploy. And yeah, I guess this also can be highly subjective.
And there is no truth to what something is or isn't in terms of value perception, because that's what it is, a perception. And it's going to be specific to your experience. So I hope I'm not offending any prebiotic soda diehards. If we need to get into influencers, we need to get into so many things. Why did I just go on a diaper? I'm so sorry. That is nightmare fuel. This episode is brought to you by Liquid IV. Speaking of companies that do the right thing and it's just embedded into their DNA, Liquid IV is one of these companies. To date, I'm watching the ticker. They've donated 666,999,907 servings of Liquid IV. Literally, as I sit here, it's probably going to hit 67 million. What a thrill. I love how Liquid IV shows the world some love. And Liquid IV is how I show myself some love. I gift myself the everyday indulgence of extraordinary hydration, quite frankly, because I want to drink less water, but still have double hydration. And Liquid IV, powered by LIV Hydroscience, there's an optimized ratio of electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients that turn ordinary water into extraordinary hydration, with 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, 8 essential vitamins and nutrients, always non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, etc. This is a part of so many of my rituals, and with Liquid IV, you can break the mold and own your ritual. 1 stick and 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. I typically take Liquid IV between the 3 to 5 hours where I'm about to crash, but at 5 o'clock, I start to parent again and need the most energy to keep up with my toddler. Also, huge fan of it on planes. Makes a big difference. They have so many different flavors. In my house, we're really into sugar-free these days. Raspberry lemonade, white peach, and rainbow sherbet are some of their sugar-free flavors. It genuinely brings me back to life day in and day out, and I'm so grateful for their partnership. And you can treat yourself to extraordinary hydration from Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code BeThereIn5 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order with code BeThereIn5 at liquidiv.com. I honestly, even though this is not my favorite drink category, I really do relate to just trying to find simple, straightforward solutions where you can buy your way to a healthy alternative, because it feels so daunting to meal plan and figure out ways to get your protein in every day, and especially adding a kid into the mix. It's hard to even enjoy meals sometimes. Sorry, I meant to more elegantly segue into an ad. I'm not trying to be misleading. I am leading to an ad for Cook Unity, which is a meal delivery service that we found postpartum because I wanted a private chef, but obviously did not have the budget for a private chef. And my husband did a testing of truly every single meal delivery service under the sun before I gave birth to figure out what would be best. And we landed on Cook Unity and then reached out to them to say, hey, I'd love to advertise for you because I believe in your product. Because what makes it different is that it's real chefs, not factories, creating these meals using seasonal local ingredients. Everything arrives fresh, not frozen. Recently, I would never make fish in the home. I don't trust myself like that. I can't cook. I had this incredible miso glazed salmon with roasted vegetables that was it was prepared by a James Beard Award finalist. It really is in between of having private chef meals and a food delivery service. In the convenience factor alone saves me hours. It's easy, it's effortless. There's hundreds of meals prepared by award-winning chefs. They heat in as little as 5 minutes, and they're restaurant quality, and subscriptions start as low as $11 a meal. You can pause and skip deliveries and all that stuff too, so there's flexibility, which I know is a big thing with subscriptions. And yeah, some of my favorite partnerships are when I like something enough to ask if they'll let me advertise for them instead of the other way around. Crush your health goals with mouthwatering chef-crafted meals delivered straight to your door. Go to cookunity.com/BeThereIn5 or enter code BeThereIn5 before checkout for 50% off your first week. That's 50% off your first week by using code BeThereIn5 or go to cookunity.com/BeThereIn5. I think what is interesting is, and that Pepsi even highlights in its press release, the so-called cultural cachet, and they're being beloved by countless celebrities. But what I think on social media, I'll speak for myself, I'm less interested in oh, cool, Gwyneth Paltrow likes Poppi. And I'm more interested in the influencer or celebrity as an investor and how that blurs the lines between authentic integration into their lifestyle and content and a paid sponsored ad. I feel a lot of celebrities invest in companies on the DL or not on the DL, like Ryan Reynolds and Mint Mobile or Aviation Gin or whatever. I feel remember back in the day, I feel Ashton Kutcher was very involved in venture capital or something, but I don't remember why that's in my head. But I think Poppi's an interesting case study where they reimagined their relationship between celebrities and consumer brands in a sense. Historically, if somebody's going to endorse your product, you pay the celebrity, right? But Poppi invited them to invest, and it kind of created this network of very high-profile stakeholders that I wasn't even aware of that had genuine financial interest in the company's success. Therefore, are going to probably promote it quite frequently, given it's tied to their success as well. A few of these names, people like Ellie Goulding, Halsey, Gwyneth Paltrow, Olivia Munn was one of its first investors, and the founder is the godparent of her children. And famously recently, Alex Earle, who is a TikToker turned mega influencer who is just crushing it in a business sense. I am not here to provide my opinions on generalized likability because that's irrelevant to this conversation. She's doing quite well. She was in 3 Super Bowl commercials. I think one was Poppi. The other 2 were not, I don't think, aired in prime, like the main broadcast. So I don't totally understand why people still say she was in that many commercials. I think one was Carl's Jr. I just think that this is an interesting conversation, this authentic integration of celebrities and influencers as stakeholders. But that is why I think Alex Earle, every time she talks about Poppi, she has hashtag Poppi partner. It does raise different questions for me as a person on the other side of that advertising that I didn't even realize was advertising. I'm getting such wildly different information from different sources about who invests in Poppi. If you go back to like articles from 2021, and they were like about Poppi closing $13 million in funding in a round led by their, venture capital firm backed by celebrity investors. It's a little bit more clear who was involved from the beginning because I wouldn't have known about Olivia Munn unless she said something on her Instagram. But apparently this round of funding in 2021 was star-studded and included Ellie Goulding, Halsey, Kevin Love, and Olivia Munn. And other investors in the music, film, and sports industries participated in the investment round include Russell Westbrook, the Chainsmokers, Kygo, Nicole Scherzinger. I mean, what? So there's a lot of people that stand to benefit from the growth of this that are so under the radar. It is interesting because there have been times where Greg's like, how about instead of ad dollars, you ask for equity in some of these earlier stage businesses or startups? And I'm like, I don't even know how or where I'd have this conversation. We're working with sometimes we work privately with marketing departments, but we're often working with ad brokers. 2, to earn equity in exchange for advertising, I don't know if it would be meaningful enough to have this kind of payout. And I assume they're only offering it to people that can buy major shares. But 3, I'm so short-sighted and I'm just like, money, please. I don't have that kind of patience. I need to afford my lifestyle now. And I don't trust enough millennial DTC brands to really have a viable business model beyond a certain number of years because they haven't proven to be. Not my advertisers now, but they come and go. Gone through a lot over the years. Can't say I would want to have been a stakeholder in all of them, but some of them absolutely. Unfortunately, how much I like or use a product, it's directly correlated to the company's financial health, and I don't have a lot of visibility into that. It's interesting to think of a level of wealth and long-term vision where you default to preferring equity as primary compensation over cash, or you wouldn't, in this case, these celebrities are probably very naturally endorsing these things because they stand to benefit from them. But it's such a gamble. Venture capital, for every 99 investments that make no money, 1 does and pays for the rest. A one-off investment here and there, the likelihood of this having this kind of payout is so unusual that these people are really lucked out. It's kind of specific to double down on this alternative soda brand, and it's pretty incredible that it's got this valuation, and I'm excited for people / I wonder if this is one of many investments or there was something specific that drew them to Poppi. I would assume it's one of many, which again is a privilege of the tremendously wealthy, which is why you can even afford to take a risk and assume most of these won't pan out if a small percentage of them pay for the rest, in which case Poppi is their 1% that will pay for the rest. What I was talking about is influencer investments and how I think it's really interesting to go the route of equity instead of paid ad hoc endorsements and what this means and if this is more prevalent than I even think it is, because who knew the Chainsmokers were investors? Also, can you imagine being in articles and being a part of a group and you're not an individual, you're a chain smoker? They have names and they're individual people that individually invested. But it doesn't say Alex Paul and Drew Taggart. Nope, you are reduced to a chain smoker, which is a tough name. If I were to speak about this neutrally, excluding any feelings I have about some of their marketing tactics, they leverage this authenticity premium pretty impressively. They got celebrity and influencer investors to not just post obligatory sponsored content. They're integrating products into their lifestyle content in a way that seems organic and blurs the lines between authentic usage and paid sponsorship. It probably generated a lot of organic feeling promotion and content that didn't trigger the same skepticism as traditional advertising. And that's why I caveat sometimes we're having a focused conversation about
contextualize success within a system as it exists today and not zooming out and criticizing it. Because for me to say that, this is successful within this context is to kind of manipulate people into thinking you're naturally enjoying and liking something when you have stake in its success and aren't formally disclosing it. So obviously that's not great. And I say this as a proud former marketer, I guess still kind of one, but a lot of marketing is tough and it's manipulative and it's a game of soliciting an emotional response for a purchase-based decision that really should be rooted in information and facts. But it's a lot easier to bait people with emotional content and convince them to, align with some sort of arbitrary brand identity that's like non-existent that you associate with a consumer product. It's all weird if we overthink it. I think discussions about this get so complicated online because when people are kind of lauding the success of Poppi and how impressive of an exit this is, it's contextualized success, right? Within the capitalist framework. I'm specifically talking about success in the context of conventional business metrics, which are growth, profitability, market share. Not what is the most right or fair or just. But yeah, it's like, it's possible to say Poppi executed a brilliant rebrand without meaning, I think, making vague health claims to sell products at premium prices is like ethical behavior, Even though it's like the name of the game, we're not always zooming out to the construct or system or concept in its entirety. But I also understand the response from people in the comments being like, why are we like applauding the rich? And it's like, I understand in these times why that would be a reflex. It's tough to figure out how to talk about things in focus without them being excessively moralized. And I can't always figure it out.
I think this strategy is a really interesting power shift in terms of how influence is monetized. Think about the celebrity endorsement model for decades. Celebrities earned money by being the face of or endorsing products. Now it's just a fee in exchange for their visibility, their reach, their star power. The brands captured most of the upside if the product succeeded. But this new model inverts that relationship to a degree, and celebrities are contributing their influence as a form of capital investment, and they receive equity in return. And then obviously if the brand succeeds, they capture a portion of that success. And it kind of takes influence to another level. It's an interesting approach to how you work with influencers. Your product isn't just an item to be sold, but your brand is an asset to be invested in exchange for that visibility. There's something interesting about women historically being the face of products and women like being underrepresented in hugely, understatement of the century in sectors like venture capital. And I kind of like the idea of instead of women just having the option to be the face of a business or the face of a product, they could be stakeholders of the businesses behind them.
Unfortunately, I don't see a more widespread, like ethical, fair means of deploying this type of financial model in the influencer sector, just seeing how predatory talent managers and content houses and beyond are and what they overpromise and underdeliver and how they take advantage of people that don't understand the financial dynamics of their work when they're new to it. There already are so many brands that offer like equity or sweat equity or ownership to influencers in lieu of payment, which is just a bullshit way to give free labor, especially if you're targeting like mid-tier rising influencers. The reality is most startups fail and the ownership is effectively worthless. And, while like situations like Poppi get attention, there's also the flip side of like an ecosystem of exploitation that is very unbalanced, that has a risk proposition that's like asymmetric to what people that invest in Poppi are dealing with. So it's not the same, like high level. I like it in theory to be like not the face, but to have like equity stake. Like, yeah, that's the optimistic girl boss in me. But the realistic person in me thinks it could be a nightmare situation for false expertise signaling, for people that don't know what they're doing running a business, and for influencers not to properly evaluate investment opportunities, and it kind of just being like another glorified unpaid internship. Like you have to be like rich to have this situation work out in your favor. So I was seeing like some guys from the Sway House and some other kind of like lesser householdy, not Alex Earle's household, but you know what I mean? Like upper mid-tier influencers that are in the millions of followers that allegedly invested in Poppi. I don't know if they were doing this for engagement. I'm lying, but let's say they did invest in Poppi and this is being used as the proxy. Think about if this model was used on other creators to shift the business risk from companies to individual creators with the promise of potential like outsizing any rewards, like that never materialize. Like for every Poppi success story, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of failed ventures where influencers provided substantial marketing value for worthless equity, and the founders will walk away with valuable experience, with connections, they'll maybe get another investment. And influencers are still like hopping brand deal to brand deal. I think it's dangerous to dress things up in startup vocabulary and investment language to make them seem like something they're not. So just want to caveat. And now Alex Cooper, Hot Mess, which is Alex Earle's podcast title. We have a pair of Shark Tank veterans on this week's podcast episode, both Poppi and Pear. This show's all about seeing things in a different way, shifting our perspective, looking at different sides of things. And honestly, the way I'm able to do this is through Pear Eyewear. I'm almost always wearing my Murphy glasses when I'm doing these episodes. What I love most about Pear Eyewear is this genius magnetic snap-on, snap-off sunglass topper. You can change your glasses from indoor to outdoor mode or from one color to the next, one theme to the next in literally 1 second. It's become an absolute travel essential for me. I only need to pack one pair of prescription glasses that work everywhere. It's genuinely a dream on planes when I don't want to put my contacts in, but my neighbors aren't always complying with my personal airplane etiquette of keeping those window shades down. So I need to be able to have sunglasses in a snap. But my eyesight's terrible, and instead of it's like clunky having so many pairs of glasses, it's just nice to have my regular prescription glasses and snap on a sun topper. The quality's fantastic. They're so affordable. Base frames start at just $60 and completely transform your look with hundreds of top frames starting at just $25. They have hundreds of top frames. They have collabs and collections from Marvel, Star Wars, NBA, NHL, sports teams and beyond, Disney, Mickey and Friends. I'm pretty basic. With my Murphy lenses, I have them in black, but I snap on a tortoise topper when I'm wearing brown and want them to blend in better with a more neutral toned outfit. It's really a genius product, and I think it will genuinely improve your life. If you have kids that are getting used to glasses, this is such a fun way to let them change up their look and style with their taste and fandom and have fun with it. But if you want to upgrade how you see the world and how the world sees you, go to paireyewear.com and use code BTIF for 15% off your first pair and support the show by mentioning Be There and 5 sent you in your post-checkout survey. That's PAIR eyewear.com, code BTIF. So Alex Cooper, she started podcasting in 2018, as did I. And as you well know, we've had very similar business outcomes as a result. Alex Cooper is my Poppi in terms of the ultimate representation of an absolute best case scenario that I think is not only unprecedented, but unlikely to happen again, even though she's managed to do it twice, which to her credit is wildly impressive with both Spotify and Sirius, because people aren't really buying up back catalogs again. Even though the second acquisition had to do more with this network she was establishing, which relevant to Alex Earle, is called the Unwell Network, and it's a media company that she launched in August of 2023. And she founded it with her husband, Matt Kaplan. The talent they first hired was, I always forget how to say her last name. Is it Madeline Argy or Argy? Alex Earle. And then it's since expanded to include Harry Jowsey from Too Hot to Handle, or in my, world, Dancing with the Stars for being Riley Arnold's first partner. And I think Grace O'Malley was also acquired when her and Brianna Chicken Fry had a falling out. Sometimes I'm like, if I heard these sentences, 10 years, what I think I was speaking a different language, Brianna Chicken Fry. Actually, speaking of, Brianna's kind of the only person that said something that really confirmed there's more to this, even though I know people are like, don't pit women against each other. I'm like, but when all signs point to a rift, it's perfectly fine to be suspicious. February 25th, out of nowhere, Variety reported that Alex Earle's Hot Mess podcast had been dropped from Alex Cooper's Unwell Network. According to reports, the Unwell Network renounced all rights to the podcast, and SiriusXM, who had announced a content partnership with Alex in August, would no longer sell ads for the show. I personally think that the language used, Hot Mess, has been dropped from the Unwell Network. Obviously, this came from Alex Cooper's camp. Otherwise, it would be, Alex Earle departing or moving on or shifting focus or doing something else. I think dropped is interesting. And then in a TikTok video a few days later, Alex Earle addressed the situation super vaguely, saying, obviously there's been a lot of chatter online this week about me and work, and I also have no idea what's going on. And I'm like, what do you mean? If you're not familiar with Alex Earle, I never know how much of a primer to provide. I'm kind of assuming you know who a lot of these characters are, but actually, it might be an interesting exercise for me to try to explain why my ultimate argument is that these two women are hubs in their own right. And Alex Earle, I don't think, was ever going to work as a spoke. Explain how I think their content got them there and what makes them have sustained success in cluttered categories in a time when growth is incredibly hard.
And when on the surface, if you came across them in passing, you might not really know what their draw is. I can be critical, obviously. My instinct is often to be more critical, but I think sometimes we do need to talk about why things work too and like normalize what we like about people. Because I think it's just the easier thing to default to is like shitting on influencers and suggesting whatever, wherever they are, they don't deserve it or like it's a fluke but no, I think these are two women that are I think these are two women that have achieved legitimacy and treated their personas as their own business empires. And I think they're slightly different and they kind of, at first working together kind of made sense, but now I actually see why it was totally at odds, even though I don't have any like tea to spill in terms of knowing something definitively. But working in podcasting, I can see where this may have gone wrong. Alex Earle, she rose to prominence as a social media influencer because of her viral Get Ready With Me videos, beauty, fashion. She was a student at the University of Miami and graduated a couple years ago. But yeah, amassed a following of over, I don't know what it is the exact number today, but well over 7 million followers on TikTok, 4 million on Instagram. She had a very rapid rise to fame in ways that's not as easy now. And it's been like dubbed the Alex Earle effect due to her influence on products and sales and trends. And she is booked and busy. Like she is the internet in the same way like Jake Shane kind of is. The same people are everywhere. And I do think Alex Earle is a person who strikes this balance of like, I'd be intimidated by you in person because you're so like objectively beautiful and look like a person that wouldn't talk to me if you're like inner teenagers feeling like, oh, she's like a popular girl. But the way she talks to you is so genuinely nice. You feel like she's really extending a hand and inviting you to the popular table. That sounds really pathetic coming from a woman like, 12, 13 years her senior. But hopefully you guys understand what I mean. Her content's vibe is like her reaching out a hand, like telling you to come to the popular table, give you an inside look at her life, a person whose life is so deeply unrelatable to most of us. I do think that it's interesting that Alex Earle didn't announce one of her ventures until she got dropped from the network, which makes me think that Alex Cooper might have alcoholic beverage coming out at some point. So I don't think Poppi was the issue. I think it was more the alcoholic beverage. I guess I should start with the only information we have is not information at all, but we have an angled teaser via Brianna Chicken Fry on the BFFs pod that she now just does with Josh that is often on my For You page that Dave Portnoy used to be a part of but isn't anymore. So they're part of Barstool, and the Barstool business model of having a cast of characters I think is relevant to what Alex Cooper's trying to do. But anyway, so Brianna Chicken Fry, which is not a real last name, when she's asked about the rumored feud between Earle and Cooper, LaPaglia stayed relatively tight-lipped, saying, I actually keep it in the box in the chamber, which if I was better at my job, I wouldn't, and I would spill all the tea. But she teased that we're about to watch a lot of shit unfold following Alex Earle's departure, adding, it's gonna definitely be a hot mess, which is Alex Earle's podcast title. When discussing if she would join Barstool Sports after Dave Portnoy made a joke about her joining following her Unwell exit, especially given, how Grace was poached by Alex after leaving Barstool, I think he was trying to make a joke about doing the inverse. Brianna said there's no world that would happen. She's Alex Earle. If anything, she will start her own company. She's not ever going to join something else because she doesn't need anyone else. And see, this is my hypothesis. I think that she was taken on as a subordinate, a subsidiary. I never listened to her podcast, so I don't know how she excels there. But I do know she is so good at the Get Ready With Me format, the in-passing OOTD stuff. She's so engaging and so prolific in how much content she makes. I think she actually has such star quality on her TikTok and Instagram feeds alone. I do know she's managed by her dad, who I imagine strong arms a lot of this because she's basically alluded to that. And she's also talked about how a lot of her investing has been influenced by Braxton, who invests in a lot of companies. Braxton Berrios, her boyfriend, who is an NFL player who just got, I think, traded, is that the term, to the Houston Texans. I actually find them to be cute. Although, I'm sure the 6 of you out there that also watch the Culpo Sisters reality show, honestly, gone too soon. I really enjoyed it. I love sister dynamics. I think that their parents are really sweet. And I think Olivia's dedication to having a normal traditional life is fascinating. I'm really happy for her that she's pregnant. She's been very vocal about her endometriosis journey. And Sorry, what am I talking about? Oh, my introduction to Braxton Berrios. I had never heard of him before because I don't follow sports people that don't date celebrities. He was Sophia Colpo's long-term boyfriend, and the first season ended with her, I think, moving in with him or moving to Miami to be with him. And I know there was like a lot of controversy with the timeline of their breakup when he got with Alex or whatever, but he seems like a really nice guy. Are you guys so annoyed by my takes? Maybe motherhood's made me soft. It's just so easy to be a passerby on social media and be a hater, and I am absolutely a hater too. I think about Alex Earle, and I'm like, honestly, she genuinely. I walk away from her videos. Maybe it's because I'm so much older than her, not feeling like a reason for comparison or like overwhelming envy or whatever, or like she's too cool. I feel like the vibe I get from her is that she genuinely seems kind, and I don't follow super closely, but I think by way of my job, I'm looking at people that like are so successful on social media from the lens of like, why is this working? It's not always about, do I like people personally or not, or have they never done anything problematic or whatever. It's like, okay, let's look at why this person is seeing this level of sustained success and extract those attributes as well. Having this kind of staying power of both of these Alexes is pretty incredible. And while I think we always need to caveat the amount of resources behind these people that make it so much easier for them than everybody else, I also think that with those resources, you can be like, you can phone it in and do things that are like really uncreative, uninteresting, kind of become really entitled and insufferable and lean into your new lifestyle in a way that completely detaches you from the audience you once gained through being an authentic human being they related to. And I think Alex Cooper, her life has changed so drastically that she probably experiences more of that fallout. I think part of Alex Earle's success has to do with incidental wealth display. She's always doing cool shit. She is at Paris Fashion Week. She is on a yacht. She is on some extravagant vacation. Her and Braxton are at some perfect, tasting menu dinner, whatever it is. I feel like she like lives in New York, New Jersey, LA, and Miami, and now I guess Houston. And when I say incidental wealth display, I don't know how to explain this. When luxury is the backdrop and not the focal point of your content, I think it's really endearing, and I think it's content that works. And if you're on a yacht or in, a 5-star hotel on the French Riviera, but you're talking about your makeup routine, your acne, feeling hungover, or like missing your siblings, there's a counterbalance there talking about relatable things in unrelatable settings. It's like you lose me with stuff I can't relate to. You bring me back in by acting unfazed by it. I mean, her life is unrelatable. It's been that way since we've met her. We're not watching her rise, and we're not watching her drift away from a version of her we initially like fell in love with. And due to our support and likes and comments and engagement, like we're watching her drift away from reality, which is what happens all the time with influencers. She's maintained a level of consistency that's pretty impressive. And what I think works about her is that, yes, she'll be in Paris Fashion Week overnight, but then she'll like fly straight home to Jersey and like do videos from her family's petting zoo. She's like in the chicken coop with her younger siblings, acting the exact same way she did at Paris Fashion Week. I don't know if I'm explaining this well, but she doesn't apologize for it in a way that I think makes her less of a target. But that could also skew snobby, so that's not a good way to frame it. But think about, like, okay, when there's something just, the way she approaches things is interesting to me because, like, she got a stylist, for example. A very unrelatable, expensive thing, and wearing designer clothes most of us could never. But she's like funny about it because she has so many fashion misses. She's like, you guys are going to hate this. I'm wearing socks with sandals. And she just kind of like giggles through it, and she doesn't take anything too seriously, it seems. So it's like hard to be mad about it. And I know a lot of people are. But for the sake of this exercise, if we're extracting what I think works, having a baseline of unrelatability, so we're not focused on the distance between the coordinates of where she started and where she is now, and feeling like we found her, in the basement, in the garage. She's the band that sold out. She's always, there's always been distance from us in terms of the overall backdrop, but the way she talks to us is like, we're in on it, we're part of it. And she talks about things that we're still doing too, without over focusing on things that would be off-putting. We just kind of accept them as part of her life. And she's like funny about it. I do think the openness about like heavily drinking is interesting in today's day and age, because I do feel like people have backed off of that, but whatevs. I almost don't think that's the hot thing to pursue now, an alcoholic beverage brand. But what do I know? I just did a whole podcast episode about beverages. So maybe I should know. However, what these two Alexes have in common is they both like kind of unapologetically talk about and target like people that are a part of a heavy drinking culture, talking about hangovers, making a hangover beverage. Alex Earle like talked about how it's very on brand for her to invest in alcoholic beverages because she does like party so much. So that connector makes a lot of sense for me for being a source of fallout, but I don't think that's all of it. I think you can acknowledge privilege without constant disclaimers or performative guilt. And yeah, I think she just doesn't act overly impressed by her own circumstances or something. And I find that endearing. But if you're the same person in your college apartment or in your incredibly messy Miami place, and I'm messy too, which I appreciate her showing, or a 5-star hotel, I think people like when your authenticity transcends setting and you're not trying to be someone you're not. And I kind of feel like similarly with Alex Cooper, I like her level of wealth is like, again, it would be a bold-faced lie to say I am not tremendously obsessed with how we technically had the same job. And I don't even understand how she is also a podcaster. It's kind of a funny job that isn't without its perks, but it has like a lot of stigmas associated with it that you have to combat. It is not necessarily something that like people like revere. It's you kind of have to work overtime to prove yourself. And it always blows my mind when she's like on the cover of Forbes and on every panel, and I'm constantly on TV. And I don't know how to explain this. It's just, yeah, whenever I see media about her and her podcasting empire, I'm amazed at how like mainstream media now treats podcasts with such legitimacy if they're a certain level of successful, and how at odds it feels with like the illegitimacy you kind of have to combat in everyday life from people kind of making it seem like it's not a real career. It won't last very long. Everybody has a mic. We need to take mics away from people, so on and so forth. But seeing mainstream media like refer to what she's built as like this podcasting empire and talk about the influence of podcasting, and seeing her interview Kamala, I'm just like, this is, yeah, it's a funny thing where I'm obsessed with that we have the same job and how different our experiences have been. But I don't look at her as an example of somebody I resent or I don't think deserves it. I'm reassured that it can have a level of tremendous success. I'm reassured that it can be taken seriously. And I'm tremendously reassured that it is possible to fundamentally change as a person and to have your audience evolve with you. I think that is maybe the most impressive thing of all. Like there was a target audience for when she was younger and speaking more daringly and raunchily. And I think it's like genuinely impressive that she's just like comfortably, confidently pivoted out of like raunchy sex talk to align more with her lifestyle and personal evolution. I pretty openly, like when all the Call Her Daddy controversy was going on, it was complimentary of like the business move and the insistence of her having the IP and stuff. But like, I was not a fan of that podcast. It reminded me of like a lot of the things I had to unlearn about how I perceived sex and sexuality, and how even the way you speak is so often from the male gaze. And I don't know, it's like, I get why it's catchy, but it wasn't like my favorite thing that it was like the most popular podcast. And that had to be the content for it to be the most popular women's podcast. But now I'm like, damn, the thing that a lot of people would have done is continue to pander to what she was known for and what made her successful without being confident that she could evolve and people could evolve with her. And I think that like I've had a lot of like insecurity about this as I've become a mom, and like my life has changed and my opinions have changed. And yeah, you just constantly wrestling with your own relevance and likability is just such a losing game and a frustrating thing to like try to be strategic about when you want to just let it happen. But she's just like very successfully, smoothly gotten to a place where she's built such a legitimate empire. She's taken incredibly seriously. and people don't use the initial content she started out with to like reduce her or discredit her in any way. And I think that's really important. But I will say, I think that some of the Unwell stuff, like the episode she did with Alex Earle, that was kind of trying too hard to be raunchy or, speak to a target audience that she's like now out of, like didn't totally land with me. I feel weird about the Sophia of it all, and I hope she's well. And I also kind of hate that I feel like Sophia came up with Unwell, and that's weird too. No, I'm not totally sure if that's the lore, but I kind of would like to see them reconcile, and I kind of wish she would like cut Sophia a serious check. It wouldn't make a dent, and I think it would be a kind gesture. And I don't even know if she'd take it. I don't know if it would seem patronizing if I was on the other end of that, but I think she deserves some of it. In regard to the beverages in the rift, I've seen my hypotheses for what could have happened are similar to what I've seen in the chatter online. One theory has to do with like a potential political divide that I actually don't think is the case. I mean, things have gotten weird with her stepmom lately. Her stepmom is Ashley Dupree from the mid-aughts scandal with what's his name? Governor. Sorry, I'm getting tired. She posted a lot about the drones, and she's kind of a conspiracy theorist. And yeah, I imagine her family's more conservative, but a lot of people's families are. I know countless people at odds with their broader families' political beliefs. It's hardly new, so I don't want to say that's like a definite thing that caused a rift. But to Alex Cooper's credit, I've loved that she's had Monica Lewinsky and Kamala Harris on. I think that people have a lot to say about her. I was never overly invested or there at the beginning to have a hot take, but I think since she has so much visibility in the industry I'm in, I will always applaud when I think somebody does a good job or does right by their audience. And I also think that people on social media, they kind of have a semi-public Marvelverse of characters are a fun follow. You know, a big blended family, like a cute relationship with your younger siblings. Again, a full-on petting zoo in Jersey. You seem just as happy sitting front row at a fashion show as you do like in Wisconsin at a family reunion. I think that balance helps. And I think that it's fun when people like let us into their family lives a bit more. That's a vulnerable thing to do. And arguably something that I don't think is great to do with younger siblings. Her sister Ashton's in college and is like a supermodel, or looks like one, and is like, does fun things and cute clothes, and they podcast together a lot. And it seems like they have a fun dynamic. Do you guys feel like it's interesting that Alex Cooper is actually a millennial, but her entire brand and like is about being like this leader for Gen Z? I mean, I guess you don't have to be in Gen Z to be like a spokesperson for them, but I think that her angling toward Gen Z is very much like an active business decision, more so than it is like an organic reality. I think it's the call her daddy audience that grew up with her that also contains younger millennials and zillennials. Rolling Stone labeled her as Gen Z's Barbara Walters, suggesting that despite her mixed audience, she's particularly influential with younger listeners. Well, that's interesting. So yeah, she definitely angles that way, but I was just looking it up and I was like, oh, she was born in 1994. And millennials officially are 81 to 96. Sorry, I keep getting off topic. Because honestly, I didn't really find much when I was looking into the beverage piece of this. That was way too much context. But leading into the long form today and just and having fun with it, because I find this interesting. And we talk about influencers a lot on here. And there's like a lot of different like gossip out there about like what could have happened. Some people saying, the family that I just brought up. There's another field of thought that I actually do agree with, because I don't think this is a source of the falling out, but I think it started a series of maybe uncomfortable interactions or broke a trust. Their first podcast together, when Alex Earle joined Unwell, was really uncomfortable to watch. And in a minute, I'll get into what I think is like the bigger thing here in terms of what Alex Cooper was trying to build with Unwell and why Alex Earle was never going to be the right person for that, just from what I've observed in the podcasting industry. But yeah, I don't know if you guys listened to their first episode together or saw clips of it, but the energy I was getting with the situation made me uncomfortable to the point where I wanted to turn it off. It was almost like Alex Cooper reverting back to her peak raunch days in terms of the content she was talking about and asking Alex all these sex
and hookup related questions. And Alex was answering them, but I could tell she was doing so reluctantly and didn't really want to and felt uncomfortable. I swear from that moment, they have not interacted regularly. I don't think she was happy that aired. And I think it started their relationship off on a bad foot. And I have no reason to think this other than the energy I felt through the screen. Like, just because you're open sexually about stuff doesn't mean other people are. And there's like a lot of reasons for that. And it's not always that you're like a prude or a stick in the mud. Some are deeply personal or due to trauma or due to like things you've dealt with in your life that you're still trying to unpack because there's so much shame associated around this stuff. And I used to hate when girls, like, in the name of being like fun and wild and like, I don't give a shit and just tell us, would kind of make people like me feel bad for being more reserved. But like, I don't trust you with that information. I don't think you're entitled to it. And I'm willing to not seem fun for 2 seconds. So you're like making fun of me for an eternity about a private matter. It's kind of like just being comfortable with not taking the shot, letting it pass. They'll give it to someone else. The pressure won't last forever. And I think we just have to learn these things as we get older and realize that our needs are more important than the brief social discomfort. Anyways, I have absolutely no reason to feel that way other than what I felt through the screen. Alex Earle is not like modest, buttoned up person, but I feel like she doesn't curse a lot. I feel like she does not have sexual humor or talk about that stuff hardly ever. I feel like she talks a lot about getting drunk, but other than that, I mean, almost weirdly reserved with the optics of someone who is not. I think reserved can come in different forms, like outwardly or inwardly. But yeah, there were signs and parties and things that they'd be in the same city and they wouldn't be in the same place. I think people knew something was about to happen, especially when Alex Earle was at the Super Bowl, but she didn't go to the Unwell Super Bowl party in New Orleans in February. And it's like her podcast network in the city where the Super Bowl is, and you're already there and you're not I mean, that was cool. Obviously something's going on. And then February 25th, Variety reported that Alex Earle's Hot Mess podcast had been dropped from Alex Cooper's Unwell network. A few days later, Alex Earle addressed the situation super vaguely, saying, I also have no idea what's going on. And I'm like, what do you mean? Then Brianna Chicken is like, oh, shit's about to go down. So I don't know, but like Alex Earle is just so big in her own right. I mean, I just don't think she wants to be managed or somebody's subordinate. And I don't say this to diminish her role in it or credibility, but I do think it helps when you have more seasoned people looking out for you, managing you, in your corner. And I gather her dad, I assume he's a successful businessman that knows what he's doing with her career. It seems like she also has access to people that probably have opinions about building her enterprise. And that, given she's only a couple of years out of college and doesn't have a ton of experience herself. So that could have played a role too. I just think her career is at a place where like she's in Super Bowl commercials. She's like investing in companies. She has her own like huge brand collapse, like bringing back skinny jeans with frame denim. And she also joined forces with Palm Tree Crew, founded by Kygo, to spearhead a $3 million investment into relaunching Sip Marks, a ready-to-drink sparkling margarita brand. And she was the largest single investor in the fundraising push. I just think she's on to bigger and better things. And I don't know if Alex Cooper didn't like that. I don't know if there were constraints she didn't realize she signed on for. And I don't know if the animosity was just built from the beginning due to something that was shared that she was uncomfortable with that like just never really repaired. We've known since May 2024 that Alex Earle was an investor in Poppi. But she didn't announce until after she was quote unquote dropped from the Unwell network on February 26th. That's when she announced she was investing in an alcohol brand, the Palm Tree Crew Kygo Sip Mark situation, which I need to look into because I'm like, also, didn't she announce it like doing a podcast or going to Carbone or something with Bethany Frankel around that time? And I'm like, interesting, the skinny girl marg of it all. Is that still a category with like a category development index that's worth pursuing? I'm interested in why that specific canned alcohol brand. I don't know anything about it. I also think it's interesting that her publicist appears to still be with Alex Earle and used to represent Alex Cooper and Alex Earle. So, and Alex Earle's publicist, Kate, her husband owns Carbone, Love. Kind of funny that there was that whole situation on social media where Bethany Frankel filmed an empty table at Carbone and Alex Earle accidentally stood her up. I actually believe the situation. Otherwise, she's a really good actor. But, all of these things serve each other and promote each other's vehicles in ways that are pretty impressive and always pays to have friends in high places. Pays to have friends that can get you a res. Every time I put the notification on Resi for Carbone in whatever city I'm in, it's like, we have a reservation available at 11:45 p.m. for 2. And yeah, it's tough out there. I love a spicy rigatoni. Regardless, I do think that publicist tidbit's interesting. And Also, there's not always like bad blood and something deeper going on. Like sometimes people just move off clients, move agencies. There's a lot of people, sometimes you work with at a company and you might want to keep or poach one and sever ties with the other. The more I experience, the more I'm like, the way that people want to completely flatten very complicated business situations involving so many people behind the scenes to like an understandable narrative without any context or experience is ridiculous, but I still do, and it's still fun. And figured you'd be along for the ride. What do you guys think? I'm curious. I wish you could talk back to me. Point being, that leads me to think that there's something with sip margs that was a conflict of interest. And I wonder if Alex Cooper is developing some sort of alcohol-related brand. I don't know what the contract said with in terms of like the appropriately there being a Bethany clause. Is there an ownership stake? Like some agencies like are more intrusive than others in terms of if you are leveraging their network to build your own persona, they want a piece of the pie. I don't think somebody at Alex Earle's level would be, for lack of a better word, stupid enough to sign a contract like that would give a chunk to an agency whose like reach you don't even need, because there needs to be like a mutual exchange of value. But I think the timing of the Sips Marg's announcement and her being dropped is somewhat telling. And what it could be is that, yeah, like with Unwell hydration, that's like a hangover cure. Since Alex Cooper, like her goal seems to be like a businesswoman. I think that she's podcaster on the side now and is like building this broader business portfolio, and we're just starting to see it rolling out, and vertical integration's the way to go. So if you're going to sell a hangover beverage and you're already in the product space, the beverage space, what's an intuitive thing to also sell? The thing that gets you hungover, which is an alcoholic beverage. It's kind of like how Whirlpool manufactures front-loading washing machines that smell god-awful and get so moldy. What's the solution for that? Buy a Fresh to clean out your front-loading gross washing machine. Whirlpool also owns a Fresh. Could Whirlpool also just make fucking machines that aren't moldy and gross? Like, yeah, that would be nice. Apple insisting that laptops now have absolutely zero ports and are making our lives more dongle forward than we'd like. My thing with this podcasting network, I think for a lot of public figures and people that want to go into podcasting, the goal is to get with an agency. And the benefit there is not only, brokering your ads and monetizing your content, but cross-pollinating with other creators and their audiences to grow yours. And part of that means that you're aligning with and hawking the branding of the organization that you are folded under. Some agencies are like more like quiet behind the scenes brokers of ads and, might have like a tiny image on your podcast thumbnail or say at the beginning, this is a blank podcast, but some want to be the brand and some want to use the creators as like spokes of their reach to ultimately be like hawking their products and IP and the stuff they own. And they see the reach of the individual creators as like further marketing tools in exchange for also supporting their careers where they become public figures and commentators in their own right. I mean, think of Barstool, think of Betches, think of media networks that are brands themselves, but also are able to really foster talent that gains their own popularity and audience. But Alex Earle didn't need that. And when you think of Alex Earle being a business person that has her own brands, her own deals, her own investments she's been working on, and then you're part of this network where everything you do is branded as Unwell, I don't see Alex Earle as a person that would want to be hawking somebody else's business all the time. So I remain interested that she even joined the network when she was at the level she was. Perhaps there was like a tremendous payout she like just felt like she couldn't say no to. I'm not sure. My core hypothesis is that both Alex Cooper and Alex Earle are at a level where they created their own networks of people they can work with in ways they can monetize, and they don't need to fit into somebody else's system. And when you are a central force that everything revolves around in your own life and you find yourself in a hierarchical situation in like an offshoot of your business that isn't your core revenue driver, I don't know if it would feel natural or smooth to be a part of somebody else's machine. I think that there are different types of influencers and each has their own merit, but some are more originators and central connectors that really
seem to control and own their own fate and stand alone. And some are dependent parts of existing structures, like, barstool personalities and stuff. And I think Alex Cooper was looking to create Unwell Network and Sirius XM, that whole venture. Like, I don't know. My favorite type of content is almost like a Stern-esque universe of characters. Like, I've listened to Jeff Lewis's Sirius show for years because he has a cast of characters that reminds me of like old school Stern, where it's like, yeah, it's just all these different personalities that rotate, and you get like invested in people's lives, and there are bits that come along with it, and a lot of the content like isn't something I personally align with, but it's like entertaining content that like is almost more entertaining because it's just so not my world. And when shows are on every day, it's just like, yeah, it becomes like background listening you get used to, and it's fun to feel like people. And part of me wonders if Alex Cooper is trying to create something like that with a cast of characters in Unwell, at Sirius, or at the agency, where yes, these people are standalone talent, but a core piece of their identity is their alignment with Alex and the Unwell network. I just don't think Alex Earle makes sense as a dependent part of an existing structure, is my point. Hopefully I touched on who they are, why I think they're both hubs that and neither are meant to be spokes. Am I in robotics? Like, wow, is that even the right metaphor? Love a Simple Machine. I feel like the suspicions are not having gotten along since the first time they podcasted, potential rifts with like the family, the dad managing and the terms of their like contract. There being a conflict of interest with investments, which is why I'm even talking about it in this episode, because some people have been bringing up Poppi, even though I think, the reason I'm including it in this episode is like thematically, if we're talking about influencers as investors, I think there being a potential conflict of interest as a source of suspicion is relevant and could be part of it. I just don't think it's all of it. And I think ultimately, they are just not meant to be stacked in a hierarchical fashion. They are meant to be the center of their own businesses and personas and want to own their own shit. And it was just like never going to work. And I do think that there's somehow a Beverage involved, given the timing of the announcement of Alex Earle's investment in Sips Marks after Alex Cooper announced she was allegedly dropped. I do think it makes sense that Alex Cooper would kind of vertically integrate. I don't even know if that's the right way to think about it, or there would be synergy if you were to make a drink that made people hungover and a drink that's, cures hangovers. And lastly, to say something that sounds incredibly self-serving, podcasting is more time intensive than it looks. It's harder than it looks to sustain. A lot goes into like producing a show and making it entertaining. And the one thing I didn't really explore is like, maybe she just didn't want to be doing a podcast anymore, or her heart wasn't in it, or there was some element of like her not turning stuff in on time, or I don't really know. Celebrity podcasts always do super well, or like influencer podcasts, people with a large following. They're always going to do super well at first due to interest. And then I think the ones that actually end up maintaining a place on the charts and doing well are people that honestly just genuinely enjoy it. I think it becomes clear when people are dragging their feet and they don't enjoy it anymore. You have to have something to talk about, and you have to have an angle. It's hard to sustain a long form thing that just talks about your life. I think celebrity podcasts do well when they clearly enjoy podcasting and when they are interviewing their famous friends, either experts or other celebrities that don't do podcasts often. I think an example will be this week with Amy Poehler and Tina Fey. Like, that was a fun episode. Or you can like be a self-help healer type, which isn't my favorite. If you want to listen to my Mel Robbins Patreon episode from this week, patreon.com/BeThereIn5. I was broadly asking the question, is Mel Robbins the new Rachel Hollis? Which I know might spook people because I know people love her. And it's not that you can't find help and healing from her. It's that I think we need to be conscious of how self-help gurus are essentially just salespeople for information, and they're not really out there to help you. They're out there to help themselves. And I bring this up because, to use an industry term, I do think self-help gurus podcasts are basically a circle jerk of having guests on that have other self-help guru podcasts to bolster their industry as a whole and sustain its importance by sharing highly clippable moments of kind of utter nonsense that's like a Mad Lib plagiarized remix of something somebody else said. That sounds good because it works, but it's often used by like somebody with credibility, like a therapist or psychologist, to help people heal. And I just worry about the limitations that these people don't really realize they have and want people to seek legitimate treatment if something's wrong. And I just think these self-help gurus overstep their bounds. And I hate that they dominate the podcasting charts, not because I'm a podcaster, but because that I think a lot of them are charlatans. Point being, I think for a famous person podcast to work an influencer podcast, a person with a big following needs to interview somebody. It needs to have an angle or topics or a topic it talks about And it's very hard to just have a podcast about your life. You have to lead a very interesting life, which Alex Earle does, but she reveals so much of it on her social media channels. I don't know if I don't know if the podcast was like a successful extension of that, if it was a difficult extension to maintain, or if it was one she maybe didn't ultimately end up liking. I'm interested to see what happens with her podcast, though I respect and appreciate that Alex Cooper released all the rights to it. I don't know if that was like a statement that wasn't meant to be seen as a positive, but I do think it's kind if people want to sever ties with you to at least let you maintain your own IP. Anyway, you guys, gotta go. I'm so sorry this went on so long. I didn't mean to depart too far from the original topic. I had to cut about an hour out, which is just my style. I always have so much more to say. Again, if you want to hear more about like the Mel Robbins of it all, that was last week's Patreon deep dive. I do 3 episodes on the main feed a month and 2 on Patreon now since season 2, because I'm working on other things behind the scenes and needed some weeks to not be doing multiple shows. Thank you for your understanding. And yeah, read the Poppi piece. I mean, I think that like they've done something really impressive. I think that the influencers and celebrity investing behind the scenes is good for us to keep in mind. And I think I'm now just kind of wondering how much of what people are featuring has some sort of behind the scenes financial stake, and like how it's hard enough to regulate FTC stuff for sponsored posts. But when these lines blur, I mean, that's just an interesting watch out for the future. And yeah, Poppi's exit really represents like a best case scenario if we're talking about, again, capitalistic metrics. But I also acknowledge that there are things that I think are watch outs that I didn't love about this story in terms of the misleading health halo effect of using a category where there are functional benefits to beverages that you once sold, but now say you never did and were just a soda alternative. But it's also not technically incorrect that it does have prebiotics in it. I think allegedly it's just that it's not enough to provide a health benefit. And it's also not illegal to do that. It's an unregulated category. A lot of people do. So it's like I want to keep in context, like not be like, this is a scam or something. And I think people go to that really quickly. I don't align in a value sense with that. And I feel like it's misleading. And for their like diehard fans who like grew this, grassroots and non-traditional mediums, I hope they don't change the formula. They maintain a relationship with them and don't go overboard on the influencer extravagance. I'm sure they learned their lesson. But also, I don't love that. I think there's a bit of gaslighting here in acting like it was never about gut health when that is like the founder's hero story is having stomach issues. Like, I just thought that part was really interesting. And Olipop's rage makes a lot more sense to me now when vending machine gate was going on. And all the while, did we talk about diapers at one point? Like, what? It's all very fuzzy. It's all very fizzy. And this isn't meant to be all that serious. They do things a lot of companies do. And I think that they did something right in carving out, a unique space for their flavors in this category. And I think some of this stuff's good to keep in mind. But ultimately, I want you to be able to enjoy things. And I know a lot of people love this category of beverages and specifically this brand. And clearly they're doing something right. So I actually think this ended up being kind of interesting to cover. I hope you did too. If you could rate and review 5 stars, it makes a difference. I'm not with a network. I'm an independent show. Not to overdo the spiel, but seriously, it matters. And if you tag me in your story at Kate Kennedy at Be There in 5, share with a friend, like it all matters. Downloading it anywhere you get your podcasts. It helps so much. And I appreciate you guys. I hope you have a great week, a great weekend. Thanks again for listening. I'm Kate Kennedy, and this has been a Be There in 5 Deep Dive. As always, let me know your thoughts, and I'll let you know mine. I'll be there in 5. I swear.